Today on the Raw Vlog, it's my review of Nightcrawler and the Babadook. So it's winter time, and now is when all of the really good movies are coming out. And I recently saw two very highly rated movies, and I enjoyed them both a lot. And I enjoyed them both for different reasons. One of them I think is a little bit more feminine, a feminine horror film, and the other one is more of a masculine thriller. But both of them have a lot of psychological elements that I really enjoy and I think are totally worth checking out. Before we get into my movie reviews, I want to tell you about a book I'm listening to on Audible. Lately, I have been listening to Frank Herbert's Dune. This is the first time I've listened to it as an audio book. I've read it 3 or 4 times, and it's one of my favorite books. It is if you didn't know, the best-selling science fiction novel of all time, and we just released a calendar image and a video about it where we were doing a Dune-inspired character cosplay. So to get in the mood, I've been listening to it, and I must say, they have done such an amazing job with this audiobook. It is of a quality I have never heard before. I mean, this book is already amazing and just filled with so much interesting geopolitical and philosophical and theosophical ideas in it. But to hear it with all these different voice actors and all these sound effects that they put in it, and they also put music and things like that in the background during certain important scenes, it's just fantastic. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I have not only read it in novel form, but now have listened to it in audio form. And for new listeners, you can listen to this book for free right now if you go sign up with audible.com/comicbookgirl. It is so awesome if you're stuck in traffic to listen to it, or if you're on a road trip. I did that when I was driving through the mountains of Georgia and Alabama not too long ago because I had to go to this wedding. It was crazy. It was awesome. It made my drive so much better. So seriously, get your free book. If you're a new listener, check it out, audible.com.
So what do you say? I could start tomorrow, or even why not tonight?
No. I'm not hiring.
Well, first, go around, get a shot inside the car.
Hey, back away.
I got it, I'm back.
Will this be on television?
Morning news, if it bleeds, it leads.
Are you currently hiring?
First up, let's talk about Nightcrawler. It's written and directed by Dan Gilroy, starring an emaciated Jake Gyllenhaal as Lou Bloom, who is this sociopath. Now, if you don't know what a sociopath is a person who does not feel things like a regular person. They don't have emotions, which makes them not really have much of a conscience. They will see an opportunity and they will do something regardless of how it makes other people feel, because they don't understand how feelings work at all and they don't care. I mean, why would you? If you don't feel them, then why would you care about other people's feelings? It's a whole thing. And supposedly 4% of the population is supposed to be sociopaths. You go through life, you will meet these people. It doesn't necessarily make them bad. They're not all killers or anything like that. But they are weird and interesting to deal with. I've ran into quite a few. In fact, I got to go see one at this birthday party tonight that I'm going to. So, and the thing that's so interesting about sociopaths making a movie about one is that our society is set up to reward sociopaths in business, because business is cutthroat. It's there's no room for emotions and feelings in business. You just got to do what puts you on top, no matter who you fuck over. And a lot of the CEOs and top business people can be classified as sociopaths. They get to the top because they're willing to do whatever it takes, and it doesn't hurt them to do that. They're totally fine with it. And this movie really takes a look at that and how people like that can exploit this system and rise to the top. So minor spoilers ahead. Just to expound upon my point of how this man is supposed to be a sociopath, you first meet him and he's stealing all these materials from construction sites, and then he's going to sell those materials. But not only does he do that, because he doesn't see a problem with it, because it's whatever, I just got to eat, I got to survive, I'm going to do this. He also ends up assaulting a night watchman and taking his watch and all this stuff. So it's that this guy's fucked up. That he's not right off the bat. Then you see him as he sees a car accident on the side of the road, and he pulls over to kind of look at it because he's just a weirdo. And then you see Bill Paxton jumping out of a van with a camera who's like filming the action. And Lou is like, whoa, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm filming this accident, and then I'm gonna, sell this footage to the news station, and then they'll give me money for it. So he decides that this is his new career goal. Like, this is his new life, is becoming what Bill Paxton calls a Nightcrawler. So this whole movie just goes through and shows you his ascent in this industry, how he just starts with a crappy camcorder and then how he moves up and up and up, and how he does it all through the fact that he just does not give a shit. Like, he just will do anything. He'll go into people's houses. He'll move a body to get a better shot. I mean, he'll just do horrible things, and he'll blackmail people that he works with. Rene Russo was also really great in this, and it was really fun seeing him entrap her, because she's just desperate, and he knows it, and he's playing upon that because, this is her last gig, and if she fucks up this news gig, then, it's over for her. So she's willing to take questionable material from this questionable guy because it does get ratings for her show. And it's really interesting because it shows kind of how fucked up television is, news is, the manipulation of information, and it brings up a lot of these ethical questions. I will say, even though I really enjoyed a lot of the ideas in this movie, I feel like it fell flat for me personally because the tonality of the movie was just as cold and calculating as the character of Lou Bloom. There was no heart to it. It's just showing you what's happening. So I kind of didn't connect with the movie because the movie itself is kind of shot sociopathically, I guess, if that's a word. And also, I kind of had a problem with the score. I know it's a minor detail problem, and I would have loved to seen this movie directed by somebody like David Fincher. So what I'm saying is that if this movie had been directed by someone with a little bit more chutzpah, I think that this movie could have been one of my favorite movies of the year. I mean, the script is great. The ideas behind it are great. Jake Gyllenhaal really goes for it in this one. He does a fantastic job. I don't think that this movie would be as good as it is without Jake Gyllenhaal, and it is definitely worth checking out for his performance alone. So that's it for Nightcrawler. Now let's talk about my super favorite new movie, The Babadook.
Where'd you get this?
On the shelf.
If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. A rumbling sound, then 3 sharp knocks.
Babadook, dook, dook.
That's when you'll know he's around. You'll see him if you look. Nothing bad's gonna happen, Sam.
Did you think that about my dad before he died?
He sees things as they are, that one.
I promised to protect you if you promised to protect me.
Oh my God. Did he hurt anyone?
The boy has significant behavioral problems.
This monster thing has got to stop, all right? It's just a book. It can't hurt you.
Oh my gosh. I watched this movie last night. I've been hearing a lot of buzz about it. And the thing is you may not know this about me, but I love horror movies. I love horror movies so much. And the reason that you haven't really heard me talk about any horror movies over the past few years as I've done my show is because there hasn't been anything to really talk about. I have not seen a horror movie that has just knocked my socks off in years, okay? In years. The well seems to have run dry, and I've been so sad about it. And finally, I got to see an amazing horror movie that really just makes progress in art. It does new things in the horror genre, and that's something that I personally just really appreciate. I like seeing someone do something a little bit different, try some new things. So The Babadook is about a woman, Amelia, and her son, Sam. And she is a single mother. She's a widow. Her husband died when they were driving to give birth to their son. And she's got this problem child, her son, Sam. But I mean, he just has a lot of disciplinary problems. He's very hyperactive. He's just draining the life out of her. She's having a really hard time coping, and she feels very isolated. And then one night she's reading a story to her son, and he finds this book, and she's like, where did you get this? And it's this like mysterious book that shows up called Mr. Babadook. And it's this amazing pop-up book that's like the creepiest pop-up book ever about this monster called the Babadook, who's going to kind of stalk you and scare you and possess you and all of these interesting things that end up kind of happening throughout the movie. And man, I'm not kidding when I tell you this book is like awesome. It's like the coolest, weirdest, creepiest pop-up book ever. And it's just so creepy because it's made for a child, you know, and it's just like, and they totally are like selling them right now. And if I get enough Christmas money, I'm totally going to buy one because it's just so awesome. Like, I can't even stand it, how cool it is. Just like, I got such a kick out of it. And not only did I get a kick out of the pop-up book, there's also all these like weird inventions that the little kid makes in order to kill monsters, because he's very focused on monsters. And he's made all these like really ingenious little like weapons to protect his mom from them. And that was also a lot of fun in the movie. I really enjoyed that element a lot. Now, I personally really, really connected with this film on a lot of levels. There's so many things going on in it that I really respond to, like, you know, the horror of motherhood and having a problem child and dealing with that, like, and just having a crazy kid, like how awful that makes your life. Like, it just shows the horror of mundane life in a lot of ways, in ways that I haven't seen before. It also goes through, you know, the horror of being a widow and like losing your husband and then being pitied by all these people, you know, and having to deal with all that sort of stuff. And the director herself said that she really kind of wanted to talk about the taboo subject of the idea of a mother wanting to kill her child. And this movie does a great job of portraying just the worst kid. I mean, you just want to strangle him to death. Like, you just want to put him in a car seat and just push him into the river in the car. I was thinking that like the whole time. The actor who played Sam was amazing. He did a great job, because not only did he show like how annoying and awful kids can be, but he also was sweet in the role as well. Like, you do see his sweet side and that he's just not all bad. I really loved that performance a lot. And Essie Davis as Amelia, the mom, is just phenomenal. I mean, she just does such a great job of portraying that tired, beaten down, like getting ready to snap, you know, thing. I mean, her character is very reminiscent, for me, in a lot of ways, to Jack Torrance, you know, where you have this person who's cooped up, you know, with their family, and just things are going bad for them and they have no help, you know, and they're just getting ready to snap. And this movie starts off as like, you know, you feel like it's going to be your, you know, your typical monster movie, you know, where you got this, you know, haunted book type situation going on, and like how you deal with it, you know, a la The Grudge or The Ring or something like that. But it really isn't a literal horror movie, even though you feel like that's what it's going to be. And I understand why a lot of people don't like the ending of this movie, because it doesn't spell it out for you of what's going on. So a lot of people are left really confused because they're not looking at it from the angle of psychology. They're looking at it from the angle of, this is just supposed to be a regular horror movie, and this is not a regular horror movie. It is, you know, metaphorical and not literal. I mean, just like Cabin in the Woods. A lot of people really didn't like Cabin in the Woods because it wasn't a literal, formulaic horror movie. And if you're in the market for that, well, there's like a billion movies like that you can watch, okay? Because there's so many movies, so many horror movies. I mean, the genre is just not doing so well right now, in my opinion. And that's why I love this movie. I love seeing a horror movie doing something that's a little bit different, thinking about things and showing things from different perspectives. I love it. I love this movie. I give it an A++. Jennifer Kent, you're my homegirl. I can't wait to see more movies from her. Oh my gosh. So for those of you who haven't seen it, go out and see it. I want to encourage all of you to check it out. But for those of you who have seen it, let's go on to my spoiler full review. I really want to talk about what I feel like this movie is really about. But if you haven't watched it, then don't watch this, because I don't want to spoil it for you. So here's how I interpret The Babadook and what it was really about. I feel like one of the main themes in it is your shadow self. I've talked a little bit about it before, but Carl Jung had an idea that there is this part of you called the shadow self. And the shadow self is like the shitty side of you who thinks like bad thoughts about people and is like, just does shitty things and all this stuff and just all the negativity, okay? It's all of your negativity. And everybody has one. And according to Carl Jung, you need to confront your shadow self and see it for what it is and then integrate with the shadow in order to be a whole person. In order to be a healthy, whole person, you need to acknowledge your shadow and you need to work with it. And this is the thing. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has a shadow self. Okay, everybody. And this movie really talks about that. That's what the Babadook is, in my opinion. It is a metaphor for this woman's shadow self, of her rage and her grief over having like this fucked up kid and having this, like, her husband's dead, and she can't deal with that. And the fact that she also works in a dementia ward, can you imagine working with like crazy old people with dementia who are like not even there, and then you go home and then you deal with like someone like her son? I mean, it's just like too much to deal with, okay? Like, this bitch has got a lot going on. She doesn't have any help. She doesn't have like a lot of money. I mean, she's just barely getting by, okay? And she just has no one to help her, okay? And so in this movie, she finally like has to confront the Babadook, and she has to look it in the face, and at the end of it, she does. She looks at it and she says, I'm not scared of you. I see you. Fuck off. Like, get out of my fucking house, you piece of shit. And I think that it's really interesting that in the end, where she's like, what do you want? And you see her husband, and he walks up, and then, it's like the Babadook wants her husband, which essentially means like her shadow self wants that grief, wants the grief of her husband's dying, so she doesn't have to carry that around anymore. Her shadow self can deal with that, because that's what the shadow self is for. So it takes like the grief of her husband, so now she can start anew. And then I love the fact that the kid's like, you can't get rid of the Babadook. You can't get rid of it. And it's like the shadow. You can't get rid of your shadow self. Like, it's in your house like all the time. And instead of trying to exorcise this demon, it's confronted, and then it lives in the basement where it's supposed to live. And she feeds it, she acknowledges it, and she respects it. And that's what you should do, and in the end, that's how she deals with it. And this is all backed up by, in the actual pop-up book, it says, the more you deny me, the stronger I get. And that is exactly what happens with the shadow. I mean, if you ignore it and you deny it and you're like, no, I'm a good person, and you don't deal with these, complicated and negative feelings that you have, it just becomes stronger inside of you, and it just bottles up and eventually just like spills out in this like horrible way. I mean, if you repress anything, good or bad, it will end up coming up later in unexpected and not fun ways. And that's another thing too. After she does tame the Babadook, and it is in her basement, you see her and she's in her garden, and it's like feeding her garden. Like, one of her roses has turned black because it's just in her house and it's in the soil, but that's where it belongs. Like, it's fertilizer, it's shit, but things grow out of shit, and I thought that was a really great metaphor too. So I really want you guys to go out and support the Babadook. Go check it out. It's not in a ton of theaters, but it is playing on demand. You can get it on Google Play and on Amazon, I believe. You can rent it from there. And Jennifer Kent is just a director to look out for. I'm so excited about her. So much flavor. I mean, that's really why I liked the Babadook over Nightcrawler, was just the style, man. And fun fact, this movie was partially funded on Kickstarter. So for all of you out there who says, no good movies ever come from Kickstarter, well, this one was partially funded and it was awesome. Of Nightcrawler and Babadook. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr for all your Comic Book Girl news and updates. And special shout out, the Comic Book Girl 19 Magic Sexy Cosplay Calendar 2015 will be on sale tomorrow on Tuesday the 9th. And we have a whole playlist of all of our making of the calendar videos. If you haven't checked those out already, they're super awesome to see all the behind the scenes of how we've created these really striking and weird, awesome images. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, and Facebook for all your Comic Book Girl 19 news and updates.